product provided by Nintendo. So we just finished the stream reacting to that Nintendo Direct, and there was some cool stuff, but there was a lack of Xenoblade, and I want to talk about that today because I think it's fair to be disappointed about the lack of presence on the Switch 2 that Xenoblade as an IP has had so far. Ever since the Switch 2 has come out, news about Xenoblade overall has been barren, drier than a desert. In fact, it's drier than roast beef you dipped in sand. Don't ask me how I know. Well, what's going on? When can we expect actual Xenoblade news, and will there be Xenoblade news? Let's get into it. Hello, everybody. I am Jmulls, and we have a lot to talk about.
We call it New Los Angeles.
So what's going on with Xenoblade? Well, there are 4 mainline entries for Xenoblade. You have Xenoblade 1, 2, 3, and X. And all of these games have versions on the Switch, the predecessor to, you guessed it, the Switch 2. These games are all playable on the Switch 2. You can load them in, you can play them, sure. I've done that myself in the occasional occasion, but the problem a lot of people, myself included, are having right now is that, well, those versions are optimized for the Switch. Way less powerful hardware. And a lot of people, myself included, want updated or enhanced versions available for the Switch 2 that make use of the better hardware the Switch 2 has at its disposal for higher frame rates and possibly resolution. I'm not too surprised at the lack of a new mainline entry announcement for Xenoblade Chronicles. I still think we're a little bit of a ways away from actually getting that. I predicted earlier this year that, hey, I'm not expecting Xenoblade Chronicles 4, Xenoblade Saga, whatever they end up calling it, until like spring 2027. So I'm not expecting an announcement until sometime in 2026. I know a lot of people are looking forward to possible remakes, remasters, or ports of Xenosaga, though to be fair, that's still a shot in the dark and it's not guaranteed, let alone anytime soon. Same thing with Xenogears. And I still think the most likely news for Xenoblade that we could possibly get in the near future would be for these Switch 2 versions of Xenoblade Chronicles 1, 2, 3, and X Definitive Edition. So the fact that we're multiple months out now of the Switch 2 release date, and we haven't seen or heard any news about Xenoblade Chronicles, can be rather disheartening because they feel like easy layup victories. Games for the most part that Nintendo have utilized in the past to show off just how gorgeous games on that hardware can look. They're big, they're ambitious, and they're technological marvels for how grand and spacious and beautiful they look on hardware where you have the preconception that it's way weaker than the competition because, well, it's weaker than the competition. A lot of the impressions you see for a game like Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition, myself included, essentially boil down to how is this on the Switch? How did they get this on the Wii U? Reactions like that are rather commonplace. And while Xenoblade isn't one of Nintendo's biggest heavy hitters when it comes to sales figures, it's not like these games only sell 200,000 copies or so. They are still niche JRPGs, but Nintendo has utilized Xenoblade in a headline position before. Like when they announced Xenoblade Chronicles 3, and they've even given specific directs just for Xenoblade before. So the lack of any news or information about Xenoblade Chronicles as a series overall and its place on the Switch 2 is not entirely surprising, but I would say it is disappointing. Not entirely surprising because, yeah, there are other IPs that sell way more for Nintendo, so Nintendo would logically want to focus on those series first. That makes sense from a business perspective. But, well, what about Monolith, the creators of Xenoblade?
We call it New Los Angeles.
So what's happening with Monolith? Well, if you watched my previous video on the subject or you've been perusing their Twitter, you'll know that they are actively recruiting, seemingly every day or at least every week, to fill in new positions they want to fill, and most of the time, when they're talking about these new positions, they're using Xenoblade imagery or videos to showcase what they need and want. Especially with the endings of 3, Future Redeemed, and X Definitive Edition pretty much pointing to a Xenoblade Chronicles 4 or 5 or Xenoblade Saga, whatever you want to call it, it feels as if their next main huge RPG is going to be Xenoblade related. It's not definitive, but it seems as if that is the direction they're going in. And it wouldn't surprise me if all hands are on deck for this. We haven't really ever seen them do enhanced versions for a new console that isn't a definitive edition for a previous game. So there is a chance that we just never see Switch 2 enhanced versions of Xenoblade 1, 2, 3, and X. It's entirely possible. I think that would be the bad timeline, but it is entirely possible, especially if they want to dedicate all of their resources to creating the next big Xenoblade game, especially since, well, the Xenoblade games are already on the Switch. For the effort possibly required to actually make those enhanced versions, do they think they'll get enough money back in order to, well, not be financially irresponsible here? And while my heart absolutely adores Xenoblade Chronicles, I can kind of understand a pessimistic viewpoint here, where it's like, do we realistically see this selling any big Switch 2 units? Possibly a few, sure, but enough to be noticeable to Nintendo's bottom line? Probably not. If I was to be an absolute pessimist here, and I'm not even sure if it's pessimism instead of just being realistic. And as someone who is not a developer, it is really hard to tell just how much work and effort would have to go into at least allowing a few of these games to run at higher frame rates or even resolution. I know some of that can be done with emulation, but I imagine in the back end they would have to make sure nothing actually breaks by doing so, instead of just winging it and hoping it works. And if they really are all hands on deck for Xenoblade Chronicles 4, we'll just call it that to save face. And they're like, look, we have to work on the future here. We have to work on what's coming next, not be perpetually stuck on these same 4 games. I can kind of understand that way of thinking, though again, I do find it to be disappointing because I have so much love and adoration for these Xenoblade games, and I want to see and play them at the best state they could possibly play at when it comes to the new hardware from Nintendo. I've said before, if they ever do Switch 2 versions where they give these Xenoblade games 60 FPS versions, or even higher resolution and stuff like that, I'll play them all again, without even a shred of hesitation in my mind. But whether or not Nintendo or Monolith even views it to be financially responsible to possibly divert resources away from whatever else Monolith is working on, because we know, right? Like, we know they're one of Nintendo's best support studios. Who knows what they're working on alongside Xenoblade Chronicles 4? Do they have the manpower to support that action, or do they even view it to be financially responsible to begin with? Like, how much return on investment would they realistically get for this? If Xenoblade was a series with a double or triple the sales figures, I could understand prioritizing stuff like this, but it's not. And while that is a bit disappointing, because, especially if you're watching this video, chances are, you are someone who probably loves Xenoblade Chronicles a lot. I know I do. Hell, 2 of my top 3 games of all time are Xenoblade games. I want to see 60 FPS versions and higher resolution versions of all these Xenoblade games more than anyone, arguably. But I can also, somewhere deep inside, understand why we haven't really seen or heard anything about them yet. And like, there's also another possibility here. They're working on them, they're just not ready yet. I would have thought the best chance to see them would be at this September Direct, but it's not the only one. And if for whatever reason it's just slow goings because they're working on a bunch of other stuff, or again, they just have to have so many resources working on Xenoblade 4, it's entirely possible that the Switch 2 versions of Xenoblade 1, 2, 3, or even just X are just taking that long for whatever reason. It's not like we are owed this stuff either. I don't recall them ever promising or saying they're ever going to do stuff like this. It's mainly just a hope that seemed like it was operating under a logical umbrella. New hardware, it's an IP that Nintendo routinely uses to showcase just how big and beautiful games can look on their hardware. Having Switch 2 versions of those games makes a lot of sense to advertise the new hardware. But with the IP that Nintendo has, it's also just entirely possible that, well, someone had to get the short end of the stick.
We call it New Los Angeles.
I wouldn't say that I'm mad or upset necessarily at either Monolith or Nintendo here. This just felt like a meatball going down the middle of the plate, and sometimes you swing and still miss at those. It happens. There could be other factors going on behind the scenes that we're just not privy to, and you know what? I still think the future for Xenoblade Chronicles overall is rather bright. Just because we don't get the Switch 2 versions of 1, 2, 3, and X, I'm not going to become like a doomer of the series or anything like that, right? I still think Xenoblade as an IP is arguably hotter than it's ever been before, and is in a prime position to leapfrog in popularity if they play their cards right. And I am absolutely salivating at the idea of Monolith having actual RAM to work with on a new system, instead of the paltry numbers they had working when it came to the Switch. And look, there's a part of me that really wants to make the title of today's video, Nintendo has forgotten Xenoblade. Like, remember that one video a while back where it was like, Nintendo forgot about Mario? And after today's Direct, I don't think they have. I kind of want to parody that video with today's title and thumbnail. I'm probably going to do that. I might just add a question mark or something, who knows. But to answer that question, I don't think they've forgotten about it. I think it could just be a matter of prioritization. And I'll be fair here, I think making sure Xenoblade Chronicles 4, or whatever they end up calling it, and making sure that game works and is good is absolutely the bigger priority here than Switch 2 versions of Xenoblade 1, 2, 3, and X, which already play on the Switch 2 and already play on the Switch. It's not like these games are relegated to old hardware no one really has anymore. These games are perfectly playable. Are they necessarily the most pretty games out there now with the resolution and all that? Not necessarily. In terms of art style, absolutely. In terms of graphical fidelity, not necessarily. Are they behind the times when it comes to frame rate? Yes, absolutely. Are they still absolutely playable and enjoyable and mesmerizing and engaging? 1000%. I still think Xenoblade Chronicles is in a prime opportunity to leapfrog in popularity so long as Nintendo and Monolith play their cards right. And while it is absolutely a bit of a dull period for Xenoblade news right now, I don't think it's going to last. It's abundantly obvious they're working on something new, especially with all the recent job postings that have been going on for months at this point. It could just simply be a matter of they're focusing on new stuff instead of old stuff. And for a series the size of Xenoblade, I can't necessarily blame them for that. I think the future for Xenoblade Chronicles is absolutely bright. It's just right now the Xenoblade IP feels like Master Chief at the end of Halo 3. Going into cryosleep, saying, "Wake me when you need me." Now we just gotta hope it doesn't get its own version of Halo 5. Oh!
We call it New Los Angeles.
Xenoblade fans are hungry. We're hungry, dude. And I have been satiating myself with this little trilogy of games right here. Yeah? I got all three, and I've been playing them on stream for the past few months, and they are incredible. And they have been wetting my whistle and satiating my appetite for Xeno stuff for a little bit now. But when it comes to ports of Xenosaga and Xenogears, I am of the same mindset as I was before. I think they are possible. However, I think they become way more likely the more popular Xenoblade Chronicles becomes, because Xenosaga and Xenogears are IP that Nintendo and Monolith do not own. While I would love to see those companies do anything with those IP, I think the more likely thing that we could see Xeno-related is the Switch 2 versions of 1, 2, 3, and X. When it comes to a Xenoblade Chronicles 2 Definitive Edition, I think we will see that at some point in the future, but not before 4. Unless they just need way more time for 4 and are like, okay, let's change up the order here. I could see them doing that maybe, but like I said, I think we will see Xenoblade Chronicles 2 Definitive Edition at some point in the future. There's a lot you can do with that game and tweak it to make it way better, way smoother, and way more enjoyable, especially like upping the resolution, upping the frame rate as just like baseline things. I made a whole video about that before. Give me Metsu Blade as well. To my knowledge, Xenoblade 2 is still the highest selling single entry of Xenoblade, and if they've done it for 1 and X, it makes sense they're gonna do it for the one that sold the most. It's just I'm not expecting that anytime soon. I would love to be proven wrong, though. So yeah, our long watch continues. Wake me when you need me. But I'm gonna be awake because we're gonna be diving into Xenosaga 3 in the near-ish future. And if you want to be around for the ride, you should leave a like and subscribe. Follow me on TikTok, Twitch, and Twitter, Jmulls, Instagram, Jmulls Gaming. I have a Discord in the description down below. And guys, I beat Trails in the Sky recently, and it's incredible. You should check out this video to find out more of my thoughts, because this is a rabbit hole I'm diving deep into. Thank you all for tuning in. Stay safe, have a great day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Until we meet again.